The Oak Ridge police station had never seen a day like this one. It was a quiet morning, the usual hum of paperwork filling the room when suddenly, the doors swung open with a crash. Officer Daniel Stone, sitting behind his desk, barely had time to react. The sound of nails scratching across the tile echoed through the station. In limped a bloody German shepherd, her eyes wild with desperation. In her mouth she carried a tiny, trembling puppy. Blood stained the floor with each painful step she took. The station fell into a stunned silence. No one knew what to do, caught off guard by the sight. The dog, clearly injured and exhausted, placed the puppy gently on the floor. It was barely a few days old, whimpering and struggling to open its eyes. The mother's gaze swept the room with a purpose. Her eyes locked onto Officer Daniel Stone. There was something in her eyes, something he knew all too well from his K-9 partner days. This wasn't just a stray dog looking for help. This was a trained police dog. Before anyone could speak, the German shepherd turned and bolted out of the door, leaving behind a trail of blood. The room was still. Stone, heart pounding, knelt down to examine the puppy, a chill creeping up his spine. He knew the dog wasn't done yet. "She's coming back," he said, his voice filled with certainty. "And whatever she's running from, it's worse than anything we can imagine." This wasn't just a call for help, it was a plea for justice. Welcome to another gripping episode of Acts of Kindness Stories. This is a story about loyalty, courage, and the bond between a dog and her human protectors. Stay with us as we follow this incredible journey of one dog's fight for her pups, and the officers who would not turn their backs. The Oak Ridge Police Department was small, nestled in a quiet town where everyone knew each other. Officer Daniel Stone had transferred here years ago to escape the memories of a tragic night. 7 years earlier, his K-9 partner Max had died in the line of duty, taking a bullet meant for him. The pain of that loss still haunted him every night, which was why he chose Oak Ridge, a place that seemed far removed from the chaos of big cities, hoping the quiet might offer him peace. But that morning, peace was nowhere to be found. The German shepherd had burst through the door, a mother on a mission. Her urgent steps didn't speak of a mere animal seeking refuge. They spoke of someone who had been through hell and was desperate to find help. Her eyes scanned the room, settling on Officer Stone, as if she knew who to trust. Stone's heart raced. He had seen that look before, the one that reminded him of his days working as a K-9 handler in Chicago. It wasn't just any dog, it was a trained protector, someone who had served with pride and skill. But now, this dog was alone, broken, and carrying a message far deeper than any words could communicate. She wasn't just seeking refuge, she was asking for help, for backup, for protection. Before anyone could react, the dog turned, limping back out of the door. The trail of blood left behind was a testament to the trauma she had endured. The officer stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Stone, however, felt a sense of certainty flood through him. She wasn't done. Whatever had sent her to their doorstep was still out there. "She'll be back," Stone whispered, his voice filled with determination. "And whatever she's running from, it's worse than we can imagine." It didn't take long for the German shepherd to return, this time with another puppy clutched carefully in her mouth. Her movements were slower, labored, but the look in her eyes was just as sharp as before. She placed the tiny, fragile puppy next to its sibling, and the officers watched in awe at how gently she handled them, despite her own injuries. Her body trembled, and yet her focus remained unwavering. "We need to get them to safety," Stone said, more to himself than anyone else. It was clear to him that the mother was determined to protect her puppies no matter what. But even as Dr. Patel, the town's vet, was called in to help, Stone knew they weren't dealing with just a stray dog. As the dog returned once again with a third puppy, Stone and the team began piecing together her story. This wasn't just a random act. This was a dog who had once served with distinction. She was Stella, a retired police K-9 from Millfield, just 2 counties over. A decorated officer who had been forced out of service due to a back injury, only to be sold to an underground breeding operation for dogfighting. As Dr. Patel began treating the puppies, Stone's mind raced. The dog's injuries were severe. She had been through hell. Her paws were torn and battered from running across the rough terrain, and her body was riddled with scars from previous battles. Yet, through it all, her primary concern was her puppies. Even as her strength ebbed away, she refused to rest, constantly checking on her young ones, making sure they were safe. Stone's heart went out to her. He had been where she was, fighting for something bigger than himself, taking on battles that seemed impossible. But this wasn't just about her survival. This was about justice. Stella wasn't just any dog. She was a protector, just like the officers who served alongside her. And she had brought her puppies to them for a reason. She's not just seeking shelter, Stone said quietly to Chief Warren. She's asking for help. She's bringing them to safety. Minutes later, Stella was back once again, moving slowly but with a purpose, carrying the fourth and final puppy. Her body shook with exhaustion, but there was no stopping her. She placed the last of her pups on the ground next to the others, and finally, her legs gave out. She collapsed beside them, breathing heavily, her body clearly drained. It was a moment of realization for Stone. This wasn't just about rescuing a mother dog and her puppies. It was about uncovering something bigger, something sinister. Whoever was after Stella wasn't going to give up easily. And now, the officers at Oak Ridge PD had a responsibility that went beyond their usual patrols. They had to find out who was behind this operation and make sure that justice was served. As they worked to keep Stella and her puppies safe, Stone's mind drifted back to his days as a canine handler. He couldn't help but think of Max. He thought of the bond they shared, how Max had been more than just a dog. He had been a partner, a protector, someone who put his life on the line for Stone, just as Stella had done for her puppies. The loss of Max still haunted him, but perhaps in protecting Stella, he could find some measure of redemption. As Stone and his team worked to secure the station and prepare for whatever was coming next, they had no idea just how dangerous things were about to become. It was clear that Stella was not just running from a breeding ring. She was running from people with power, people who weren't going to let her go without a fight. Hours later, the tension reached a breaking point when two men, merciless and determined, showed up at the station demanding the return of the dogs. Their attitudes were cold, their words laced with threats. One of the men, a tall figure with a baseball cap, claimed to have ownership of the dog and her puppies. The other, stockier and more aggressive, made it clear that they would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. As Stone stood there, watching the scene unfold, a realization struck him hard. These men weren't just interested in the dogs. They were part of a larger operation, one that involved illegal dogfighting, gambling, and cruelty on a massive scale. "We need to find out who they are," Stone said, his voice steady despite the growing tension. As the investigation unfolded, Stone's team began to uncover the dark web of corruption and cruelty that had been hidden right under their noses. The puppy in Stella's care wasn't just any animal. He was a victim of the underground fighting operation, the product of years of exploitation, abuse, and neglect. But in a twist that no one could have expected, they learned something that would forever change the course of the investigation. The smallest puppy Stella had brought into the station wasn't hers. He had been taken from another mother dog at the fighting operation, carried to safety by Stella. Even in the midst of her own suffering, she had chosen to protect him, just as she protected her own. The discovery was staggering. Stella wasn't just a victim of her circumstances. She was a hero, an animal with a kind of moral compass that transcended human understanding. She had rescued a puppy who wasn't even hers, driven by a force far greater than survival. As the investigation moved forward, and the corrupt officers who had been part of the underground ring were slowly uncovered, it became clear that the case wasn't just about saving animals. It was about fighting for what's right, no matter the cost. And it wasn't just the officers at Oak Ridge who were making a difference. The whole town of Oak Ridge had rallied together, showing support for the police and for the animals who had been so tragically exploited. 1 year later, a ceremony was held in the town's municipal park to honor Stella and the team that had worked tirelessly to bring justice to her and her puppies. The ceremony was more than just a celebration of their success. It was a symbol of what could happen when a community came together to fight for what's right. As Officer Stone stood there, watching Stella's reunion with her puppies, he realized that this wasn't just about saving a dog. It was about recognizing the value of loyalty, courage, and the power of second chances. The German Shepherd had come to them seeking help. And in helping her, they had all found healing. As the sun set over Oak Ridge, the town gathered in the municipal park to witness something extraordinary. The ceremony honoring Stella wasn't just about recognizing a dog's service. It was a celebration of courage, loyalty, and the unbreakable bond between a dog and her human protectors. Officer Stone, standing beside Stella, knew this moment was more than just a chapter in her story. It was a reminder of the lengths we should go to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The investigation that began with one dog's plea for help had grown into something much larger, a victory not only for Stella but for every animal suffering in silence. The world had seen what happens when people stand up for what's right, even when the odds are against them. And as Stella sat proudly, now wearing her badge once more, the crowd cheered for a hero who had saved lives and inspired change. But it wasn't just about Stella's victory. It was about the collective strength of the Oak Ridge community, coming together to expose the truth and bring justice. The police department had been forever transformed, and the ripple effect of their actions would continue for years to come. In a world that often feels divided, Stella's journey reminds us that the fight for justice transcends species. It's about recognizing the value in each life, whether it walks on 2 legs or 4. Her story is proof that no matter how dark the world can get, there are always heroes ready to step up and make a difference. If Stella's story moved you, leave a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and let us know what you think in the comments. Your voice matters, and together we can spread stories of hope and kindness. Don't forget to subscribe to Acts of Kindness Stories. We're on a mission to reach 10,000 subscribers, and your support makes all the difference. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you in the next incredible story.